so this is an opportunity if anyone would like to unmute and ask a question. But as some have noticed, I also have managed to get a chat window up. And so if you have something you want to type, I can try to address that. We have had a few questions. I think many of them have been addressed in the chat, but I can start with some of those if, you know, in the sort of the spirit that sometimes one person's question is somebody else's as well. But I will pause for a second if anyone would want to unmute and ask a starter question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, this is Nan Rosenblum, and I'm calling from my car. And I was wondering, maybe you said that I mentioned or maybe you mentioned but I missed it, what the data retention policy on DOE machines is. Is there a time frame for that?
It's a fantastic question, and I did not mention it. You didn't miss it. So there's two answers, and one of them is very straightforward, and the other one though is I think a little bit more useful but less obvious. So for the most part, both facilities have different policies associated with the data retention, and it's really mostly triggered from when you have an active allocation. So Dima, if you want to chime in with exactly when OLCFs kicks in, please do. For example, for ALCF, you have, you know, it's at least a year to two after the end of any project that you might have at the facility. But the way this tends to operate is if you have an INCITE proposal or even a discretionary proposal, right, a project, it's not unique just to INCITE. It's very rare that sort of your work ends and then you're done and you're gone. For the most part, say, especially through INCITE and ALCC, projects continue on either through another project through INCITE and ALCC, or they have a discretionary project that follows that, right, as they're wrapping work up. So that's the first, and I'll give Dima a chance to answer specifically on the time frame in OLCF if he has it. The other one, though, I'll say is so what I mean is that this is a window of a year or so when all of your projects are done at the facility that you would have to manage your data and move it. For ALCF, we do have at this point we're moving into having data only projects, and so this is being in part driven by the community file system that we have. So if there's data that you need to preserve that you are using as a public data set, for example, or there's a reason it cannot be moved, you are able to ask for a sort of a data allocation in order to keep a data set alive. And we can talk in more detail about that. But that is through the discretionary component of the facility, not through the INCITE program.
Katherine, in case it helps, I posted the link for the ALCF.
Thank you.
Sure.
So at Oak Ridge we have very similar situation, and usually it's done case by case basis. So if you plan or if you need this, we have a long storage solutions, but you please do reach out to us. It's very important that the situation like you had a postdoc who was running a lot, and then you know that there was a very available data generated, and then suddenly you half a year later you suddenly say like, oh yeah, I want to get back and get that. That is of course very tough on the facilities. But if you talk to us a little bit ahead of time, that usually those requests are easily be easily accommodated.
I think the short version of this, right, is both facilities take very seriously that what we want is for you to get your science done and to support the science that you're doing. So we are not trying to kick you off. As long as we know what your needs are, we can probably accommodate it, right? That's really our goal. I know that was a very, very happy, feely sort of response, that last bit, but I'm quite serious about it, and I think that's been borne out over time.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
So there are a couple of questions in chat. Maybe I should read them.
Yeah, if you want to read through them, and I could channel some of the answers we had.
So there is one question here about the HPC resources. We specify, like the author asked if they need to specify which resource to use in proposal? ALCF or OLCF or both?
Yes. We need to know where you're going. And and I prefer to give people the whys and not just to say yes. So here's the whys. The first reason is when we're doing your readiness assessment, we need to understand if you are ready for the resource you're targeting. And if you are requesting both resources, which is absolutely fine, we need to understand that what you're targeting, say for ALCF and for OLCF, is appropriate, right? That you are that the component that you're targeting for OLCF is ready there, and the part that you're targeting for ALCF is ready, and that you're there. So we do need to understand that. And so as you're going through the proposal, you will see that for each year you will need to enter the amount of resource you would like on each resource. So for Summit, for Frontier, for Theta, Polaris, or Aurora. And so you'll have to put a number in for each one of those for each year. But it's very important we know where you want to go. The other component to this is because of our awards. So when we make the INCITE awards, we are making a commitment that, assuming that projects start moving early in the year, we are committing to that time being available to your project. I mean, if you have this huge award and you wait till the last 2 weeks in December, that's a lot harder, but perhaps impossible. But for the most part, given reasonable use over the course of the year, we're committing that time is available. And so if we don't really know where you're targeting for work, that becomes very difficult to make appropriate allocations so we can commit to the quality of service we want for the projects. This is actually also related to why it's very difficult to move awards, right? So we've occasionally had requests from PIs. I got time on this machine. Can I translate it? Can I transition it to this machine? And that especially across facilities within the program is very, very difficult to do, to impossible.
So the other question here is what is the average number of team members on an INCITE project?
That's a fantastic question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but it is quite variable, right? So we have proposals that come in that are successful, that have, a very small number of people, maybe like 4 or 5 total project members who are participating. But we also then have community proposals historically that have been, 2-3 dozen people, right, who are participating in executing the project. Those community ones, I think, historically have been the largest. But my guess, if I had to make a guess, and others who have been looking at this for a long time are welcome to as well, my guess would be the average is in that like 10, kind of number. But it's quite variable. It's not there'd be a wide range on that average.
Okay, we have one more question here. It's what level of federal funding support is required for an INCITE award?
No level of federal funding is required. To be honest, there's nothing even in the rules about INCITE that there is funding required. And I say that to be complete, but I would say that, at that point with no funding for a project, the risk of the project or whether, you've got the right people on board to do the project becomes very challenging as a case to make. But yeah, there is no requirement that your funding comes from a federal source or that your funding comes from the United States for that matter. So yeah, you can apply with any funding source.
Okay, that's all we have in the chat right now.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Sorry for the interruption. Do you want to finish?
No, go ahead.
Hi, I'm ZJ1 from University of Kansas. So my question is, does a computationally intensive proposal need innovation in visualization to be successful?
No, I would say it does not. I would say the following. I'm trying to sort of infer something perhaps from what you're saying, that if it should be clear from the proposal how whatever scientific insights you're looking to provide, right, from the research, that how you will get there. So sometimes, right, that product out of of a project is genuinely like the data set, and we know that it will take a long time to extract everything you need out of that data set. So the data set itself is the valuable product. But if it is not, understanding how you might actually get to, and actually provide and analyze the data to get to the target and answer, sort of the challenge that you have in the proposal, that does need to be clear. So there's no requirement that there's visualization there. I will put a plug in for both facilities visualization people that there's a lot of fantastic ability, right, to help you innovate there if you think you might need it. But generally, as long as the research plan is clear and how you will deliver results is clear, then you should be okay. Did that answer what you were asking?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Okay. There was a question in the chat. One of the things I was going to say earlier, there was a question in the chat about early career proposals, and I wanted to bring that one back up because it's one I get very regularly, so I like to repeat it. and that's whether all the PIs on an early career proposal need to be early career, and they do not. The idea behind this, right, is that we want to support that early career person as PI. So we do want to make sure we understand why is that person the PI, and to make sure it's not that just did a quick switch, right, and the previous person who was PI is still going to basically be running everything from behind the scenes. We want to try to avoid that. So in the sense of what we're asking with the early career track of writing this proposal about how it will support your career, and the management plan, we hope that is clear. But you do not need to have all early career on the proposal. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Lian Shan from Oak Ridge. Can I ask one more question about the talking about the multiple years proposal? Say, should I prepare for 1 year first, then ask for renewal in the next year, or just put all 3 years proposal in one?
I don't have I can't give you a concrete answer to that, but I'll give you some information you can use to make a choice. The first thing is that if you have a coherent plan for multi-year awards and a science driver that really supports it, so it's just not just the science, that you have a science driver and a reason why, right, that you can lay out for multi-year. There's a lot of benefit there for you as a PI because it reduces your risk, right? Then you have a much higher chance of the renewal than you do of a new proposal if you did a single year proposal and then applied again as a single year. I would recommend thinking about it that way, right? That as long as you think that there is a coherent plan there, okay. I encourage people to think of the multi-year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will also say that, there are times where people ask for multi-year awards, and because of feedback from the science panels or perhaps because of risk assessments at the facility, you might get a 1-year award, right? With the premise being, show success perhaps, right, in that first year, and come back and compete again. But normally you'll have feedback from either the peer panels or from the program that would be end up being me telling you why that decision was made, so it can give you some insights.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I also want to encourage people to feel free to email me or email incite@doeleadershipcomputing.org, which is also me. And but feel free to reach out if you have questions, either because they occurred to you later or you didn't necessarily want to ask them in the webinar. This is all about questions and answers right now, as we move into the last days of the proposal. So we're looking for them. What I did want to just touch on is a few last things to think about if you are working on your proposal for 2022. If you're working on your proposal in PeerNet, I just encourage you to realize that you can save your proposal anytime. You can always come back and edit it. And actually, even after you submit the proposal, you can still go back and edit and resubmit if you realize there are changes you want to make. Basically, until June 18th, the end of the day, you are able to go in and edit. But I also encourage you to get started on that in PeerNet, just so you're comfortable with what's in there. You will notice that there are some required fields, as is the case. We're all very familiar with web forms. You will be required to enter in that information. But you can also save incomplete forms and go back and work on them before you submit. I mentioned this already, but just to touch base on it, right? To remind you, the decisions are made by the LCF division directors, the INCITE program manager, the LCF's directors of science, and we really connect those, that we really drive those decisions by what comes out of the science panel, and then look to see who's ready to go out of those top ranked proposals. And really that's driven by, as you go to each panel, right, and look what they deliver to us, they not only deliver feedback for the PIs, but they deliver, basically a ranked list, right, of the proposals, those things that they think are very important for us to fund, those things that they think would be good to fund if we could, and those proposals that still need some work. So there's a lot that goes into this process, but as I mentioned before, that decision and announcements of that are made in November. In making those decisions, we do try to hit a bit of a balance, right? So we want to make sure that, we have this, we want to make sure we don't cut projects in terms of times of projects so they can't deliver what they are enabling. We make a strong effort to deliver projects what they need to make sure that their work is actually executed as they proposed and as feedback from the peer panel supported. Each facility has a substantial scientific staff. So one of the things that limits how many projects we can award is not just how big the machine is and how many hours are available, but also our support staff, right? And we make sure that we always have enough support staff available that, if most of the INCITE projects raise their hand and said, we really need a lot of help right now, we have enough people available that we could do that. So that is actually, this balance between support and humans there to help you and make sure you're successful, and also making sure we have, a broad set, of diverse projects that can move us forward in discovery. As I mentioned, right, we are often oversubscribed, right? This is often in the 4 to 5 times oversubscribed in terms of total requests. And even close to that, maybe in the 3x oversubscribed if you look at meritorious projects coming out of the panels. So it is a delicate balance as we're determining how many awards to give, whether we reduce the total amount of time of a project. There is an appeals process. You would submit that. So if you receive a decision that you disagree with, you can submit that to me, the INCITE program manager, or the LCF directors. But that's really looking, if an error has occurred in the decision-making process. But assessments of, or challenging the relative scientific merit is really not considered in appeals. It's more whether there was an error in our process. As I mentioned, we will announce in November of this year. And at that point, if you have an award, you will be provided with a catalyst at the LCF, a liaison at the OLCF, the same thing. They are basically scientific computing experts. They are coming almost exclusively from a very specific domain. So they're domain scientists, right, who have transitioned to working at the leadership computing facilities and helping move forward advanced scientific computing. And and they can help with everything from just getting started and figuring out the lay of the land to even help and collaborate with you on aspects of your code if you're trying to look for ways to improve and plan for new machines. There are responsibilities to you as a PI. We ask that you provide a quarterly status update. It's a supplied template. It is not supposed to be onerous or take a lot of time. It's basically a check mark, right? Like a a check-in, to make sure that, there's a trigger if you are having any issues, that you can bring that up in the quarterly report. If you've had successes, that you can let us know. And most importantly, I would say in the quarterly reports is also if you've had publications or posters, awards, journal covers related to the work. As Dima said, the way we pay back what the federal government gives us, what Oscar and the Department of Energy give us to run the facility, the way we pay that back is through talking about what science is able to be accomplished at the facilities. And the only way we can do that is by working with our PIs to talk about it. And we occasionally, do discovery, right? And go look for publications from PIs. But the most efficient way is for you just to let us know what publications you've got coming out and what successes you've had. And so that goes into this other component of the responsibility, which is to work with us. We do, a lot. We put a lot of effort into actually highlighting your work and shining a light on it. And so hopefully you will work with us to do that. We also ask that, if you do have a renewal, that you submit your annual renewal request. There is an annual survey. It is just meant to sort of make sure the facilities are doing their job. We have to do the surveys. We are required, part of our mandate. So please respond. And also to encourage your team to be good citizens on the computers, right? It's a shared resource. We do a lot to make it, sort of straightforward, but look at, how other people are using the resource, look at, and compare and just be good citizens. But really, primarily, I just want to encourage in terms of responsibilities, let us know what achievements you're having with your project. Let us know what challenges you have. We want to hear the challenge before it gets frustrating, right? And we will try to tackle it. We do have both facilities, different types of user meetings and trainings. You will see all of those come to your mailbox if you are a PI of a project, whether it's an INCITE ALCC or DD project. Encourage your team to attend. These are often even just like webinars, right? About like quick conversations about how do I do this thing on the computer. It's an hour or two of somebody's day in those cases. So, but all the way through multi-day workshops where we're trying to tackle a complicated problem with your code. So bring those forward. And help encourage your team to bring those forward and to participate. The other thing I want to point out is that we do have an acknowledgement that we need in publications if you are using the facility, and they're both listed here. They're also both on our websites, on the ALCF and the OLCF websites. But there's one acknowledging the INCITE program if that's the time that you were using. But if you were using either resource, even through the discretionary pool or the ALCC pool, there are these general acknowledgements at the bottom here for Oak Ridge and ALCF. And finally, I'm just going to encourage you, if the INCITE program or using the LCFs is impacting your work in a good way, let your sponsors know. Let them know that it is valuable. In the end, all of this stuff, right, is there's a large social component to this of just showing that we are able to impact science and move work forward, that we're good collaborators. And as I said, right, the way we pay back to DOE the funds for running these facilities is through science and accomplishments and showing that we are collaborating. So we do try. And as I said, reach out. This is, especially right now, it is entirely Q&A time. We have more time today, but I'm literally just answering INCITE emails right now and answering questions. So I encourage you to reach out if you have any concerns. And a lot of these contact information you've already seen, but this is where you can reach out for more more details specifically to the facilities or to the INCITE program in general. I really appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you considering INCITE. I really hope you apply. And if you choose not to, I'd also sort of be curious to understand why, right? If your decision is that I just have more work to do before applying, that's one thing. If you feel like there's some part of the message today that deterred you, bring it forward. I'd like to hear it. And if you have any questions about working on your proposal for this year, let us know. Thank you.